My wife is investing our savings into her secret boyfriend's fake tech company. It started with a whisper, a tiny, almost imperceptible shift in the air that I couldn't quite place, like a change in barometric pressure before a storm, only instead of rain, I felt dread pooling in my gut. And hey, if this story is hitting you hard, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Give us a like, share it with someone who might get it, and drop a comment below. Your engagement really helps us keep these stories coming. Anyway, back to the storm. Her name is Sarah. Sarah and I, we built a life. We did the whole suburban dream thing. A mortgage on a house that smelled like new carpet and possibility, a dog that chewed everything until it was just right, and a shared calendar that looked less like a plan and more like a carefully choreographed dance of survival. Work, grocery runs, PTA meetings, the occasional date night we'd have to reschedule because one of us was too damn tired. We'd been together since college, this whirlwind romance fueled by cheap beer and shared anxieties about the future. She was the fire to my steady burn, the one who could always pull me out of my own head. We talked about everything, or at least I thought we did. The first crack wasn't obvious. It was a late night at the office for her. Sarah's always been driven, always had that spark, that ambition that I admired. She worked in marketing, and sometimes, yes, the deadlines were brutal. But this time, it was different. She'd come home a little too tired, a little too distant. Not angry, not upset, just elsewhere. Her phone started being glued to her hand, not in a new way, but with an intensity that made me uneasy. Quick glances, hushed tones when I entered the room, her thumb flying across the screen like she was defusing a bomb. I told myself it was just work, the pressure, the stress. I'd pour her a glass of wine, rub her shoulders, and try to draw her back into our orbit. She'd offer a weak smile, a mumbled, "Thanks, honey," and then her gaze would drift back to that glowing rectangle. Then came the money. We had our savings, of course, not vast, but comfortable. Enough for a down payment on a vacation home, maybe some serious home renovations, a cushion for the future. We talked about it endlessly. Sarah, ever the pragmatist, had been the one to suggest setting up a dedicated investment account. "Let's make our money work for us, Dave," she'd said, her eyes bright with that familiar enthusiasm. I'd been all for it. We'd sat down together, gone through the options, felt good about the diversification, or so I thought. The first inkling of something truly off came when she mentioned a new investment opportunity. "It's this startup, Dave, really cutting edge, AI-driven personalized learning platforms. It's going to be huge." Her voice had that excited tremor, the one that usually meant she'd landed a big client or found a killer deal.
I asked for the prospectus, the details. She brushed it off. "Oh, it's early stage, not much on paper yet. But I know the founder. He's brilliant, a real visionary." She'd said it with such conviction, such certainty, that I'd let it slide. My gut, though, that low hum of unease, it started to thrum a little louder. I'm not a complete idiot. I know how these things work. Early stage startups are risky, but Sarah, she was usually so methodical. Then she started taking out larger sums. Not all at once, but in increments that, when added up, made my breath catch. I'd see the withdrawal notifications pop up on my phone. We shared the account, after all, and my stomach would clench. "Just moving things around, honey," she'd say, her smile a little too quick, her eyes a little too bright. "Diversifying, like we talked about." But it didn't feel like diversification. It felt like an extraction. I started checking the account more often, looking for trends, for patterns that made sense. They didn't. The money was flowing out, steadily, relentlessly, to an account I didn't recognize. And the more I dug, the more I realized that Sarah was becoming guarded. Her phone calls became even more clandestine. She'd step outside to talk, even in the pouring rain. When I'd ask who it was, she'd say, "Just a friend," or "Work call, you wouldn't understand." The "you wouldn't understand" stung. We used to understand everything about each other. The names started to surface subtly, a fleeting mention in a hushed phone conversation. "Leo thinks this is the right move. Leo's confident we can hit this milestone." Leo? Who the hell was Leo? I'd ask Sarah, casually, trying to keep my voice light, to not let the suspicion creep in. "Oh, just a colleague," she'd say, her gaze fixed on the TV. her fingers nervously twisting a loose thread on the couch cushion. A colleague who was apparently influencing her investment decisions with our life savings. The pieces didn't fit. The casual dismissal, the vague answers, the large sums of money disappearing into the ether, all linked to this phantom Leo. I started staying up late, pretending to read, just to watch her. The soft glow of her phone screen illuminating her face in the dark, her brow furrowed in concentration, a small, almost secretive smile playing on her lips. It was a look I didn't recognize. It was the look of someone deeply, intensely involved in something they were hiding. I remember one night, I was working late in my home office, trying to catch up on some reports. It was past midnight. I heard footsteps downstairs, the muffled sound of voices. Not angry, not arguing, but intimate. A low murmur punctuated by soft laughter. I crept out of my office, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I peered down the staircase, my breath catching in my throat. Sarah was in the living room, bathed in the dim light of a single lamp.
She was sitting on the couch, facing away from me, and across from her, leaning in, was a man. He had dark hair, a sharp jawline, and he was looking at her with an intensity that made my blood run cold. They were sharing a bottle of wine, their hands occasionally brushing as they talked. He was gesturing, animated, and she was nodding, her eyes wide, captivated. I couldn't hear their words, but the intimacy, the shared moment was palpable. It was a tableau of connection, a scene I hadn't witnessed between us in months. Who was he? What were they doing here at midnight? The pieces started to slot together, forming a picture so ugly, so devastating, that I could barely comprehend it. Leo. This had to be Leo. The brilliant visionary behind the tech startup, the one she was pouring our future into, the man she was meeting with in the dead of night. The savings account, the hushed phone calls, the distant looks. It all coalesced into a sickening wave of realization. She wasn't just investing, she was investing in him. And it wasn't just about money. The way he looked at her, the way she leaned into him, it was more than just business. I retreated back to my office, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the mouse. My mind raced, flipping through every conversation, every glance, every unexplained absence. The late nights at work, the girls' nights that always seemed to end with her coming home alone, flushed and evasive. It was all a carefully constructed facade. I felt a rage building inside me, hot and suffocating. But beneath it, a profound, bone-deep sadness. I'd trusted her. I'd built my entire world around her, and she had been systematically dismantling it, piece by piece, with a smile and a lie. The next few days were a blur of forced normalcy. I went to work, I came home, I ate dinner with her. We talked about mundane things, the leaky faucet, what to make for dinner, the upcoming school play. All the while, this knowledge festered inside me, a poisonous secret that was eating me alive. I watched her, searching her face for any flicker of guilt, any sign that she knew I knew. But she was a master of deception. Her eyes were clear, her smile genuine. She even suggested we go out for a nice dinner that Saturday, just the two of us. "It feels like we haven't had a proper date night in ages, Dave," she'd said, her voice sweet. I'd agreed, my stomach churning. I had to know. I had to see it with my own eyes. Saturday arrived, a bright, crisp autumn evening. We went to that little Italian place we used to love, the one with the red checked tablecloths and the candles flickering on every table. The food was good, the wine flowed, and for a brief moment, I almost forgot. Almost. Then she pulled out her phone. "Just checking in," she said, her usual excuse. But this time, I saw it. A text message from Leo. The message was short, but the implications were deafening. "Tonight was incredible. Can't wait to see you again." My blood went cold. Incredible? Tonight? We were at dinner. We were supposed to be having our date night. I looked at her, really looked at her. The way she held her phone, the almost imperceptible smile that touched her lips as she read the message. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about him. It was about them. The savings account wasn't just a fake tech company. It was a gateway to him, a gateway to her betrayal. I felt a tremor run through me, a seismic shift in the foundation of my reality. The carefully constructed life we'd built together was crumbling, and I was standing in the ruins, the architect
architect of my own destruction. The candlelight on her face seemed to flicker, casting long, distorted shadows that mirrored the darkness blooming in my chest. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. The world outside the restaurant, the laughter of other couples, the clinking of glasses, it all faded into a dull roar. All I could see was that text message, burning itself into my memory, a stark, undeniable testament to everything I had lost. The fork in my hand felt heavy, useless. The wine tasted like ash. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that this was just the beginning of the end. And the questions swirling in my head were far more terrifying than any answers I could find. What else was she hiding? How deep did this go? And how could I ever look at her the same way again? The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating, broken only by the distant hum of traffic and the clatter of silverware from other tables. Sarah, oblivious, or perhaps pretending to be, tucked her phone away and smiled at me, a bright, performative thing that didn't reach her eyes. "Everything okay, honey?" she asked, her voice a little too cheerful. I could feel the blood draining from my face. Incredible. Tonight. The words echoed in my skull, a relentless drumbeat against the fragile remains of my composure. My hands clenched under the table, my knuckles white. I wanted to scream, to smash the plate, to demand an explanation, but a chilling calm had settled over me, a numb paralysis born of shock. This wasn't a movie. This was my life, and I was watching it unravel in real time, with a front row seat to my own destruction. "Yeah," I managed to croak out, my voice sounding alien and strained. "Just thinking." She nodded, her gaze flickering towards the window, as if looking for an escape. "About what?" I forced myself to meet her eyes, and in that instant, I saw it. A fleeting shadow of something I couldn't name, a flicker of guilt, fear, or was I projecting my own agony onto her? It was impossible to tell anymore. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I'd shared my deepest secrets and wildest dreams with, had become a stranger, an enigma wrapped in layers of deception. "About us," I said, the words tasting like sawdust. "About where we're going."
Her smile faltered, replaced by a more genuine, albeit strained, expression. "Dave, we've talked about this. We're doing great. The house, the savings, things are good." "Are they?" My voice was quiet, dangerously so. "Because it feels like things are changing, Sarah. And I'm not sure I'm part of that change." She reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine. The touch felt electric, a jolt of revulsion mixed with a perverse sense of familiarity. "Don't be silly. Of course you are. We're a team." A team. The word felt like a mockery. A team doesn't lie. A team doesn't siphon off shared assets for secret ventures with a lover. A team doesn't sneak around behind each other's backs. The rest of the dinner was a performance. We talked about work, about the dog, about our neighbors. Every word felt like a lie, every shared laugh a betrayal. I watched her, dissecting her every move, every gesture, searching for cracks in her facade. She was good. Too good. She deflected my subtle probing questions with practiced ease, steering the conversation back to safe, mundane territory. But beneath the surface, I could feel the seismic activity, the rumbling of an earthquake that had already shattered my world. Driving home, the car was filled with a thick, heavy silence. She hummed along to the radio, her head resting against the window. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles aching, my mind a battlefield of conflicting emotions. Anger warred with a desperate, gnawing sorrow. I felt like I was drowning, the weight of her deception pulling me down into an abyss of despair.
I wanted to confront her, to demand the truth, to shatter the illusion. But a part of me, the part that still loved the woman I thought she was terrified of what I might hear. When we got home, she excused herself quickly, saying she had an early meeting the next morning. She kissed me on the cheek, a quick, perfunctory gesture, and disappeared into our bedroom. I stood in the hallway, the faint scent of her perfume, the one I'd bought her for our anniversary, now a nauseating reminder of everything I was losing. I couldn't go to bed. The house felt too quiet, too empty. I wandered into the living room, the same room where I'd seen her with Leo, and sank onto the couch. The dim lamplight cast long, distorted shadows, the same shadows that now seemed to inhabit my soul. My eyes fell on her laptop, left open on the coffee table. Normally, I'd never dream of snooping. It felt like a violation of trust, a line I wouldn't cross. But the rules had changed. Trust had been incinerated. My fingers, trembling, hovered over the trackpad. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, to walk away, to maintain some shred of dignity. But the desperate need to know, to understand the full scope of her betrayal, was overwhelming. I took a deep breath and clicked it open. Her email was already there, a familiar interface that now seemed alien and sinister.
I navigated to her inbox, my heart pounding in my ears. Most of it was work-related, the usual marketing jargon and client correspondence. Then I saw it. A folder tucked away, innocuously. Project Phoenix. Phoenix. A mythical bird that rose from its own ashes. Was that what this was to her? A rebirth? A new beginning with Leo? With a sickening lurch in my stomach, I clicked it open. Inside, there were dozens of files, all with cryptic names. Phase 1 report, seed funding proposal, Leo's vision. My breath hitched. This was it, the fake tech company. I opened Leo's vision. It was a document, a manifesto of sorts, detailing his grand plan for an AI-driven personalized learning platform. The language was lofty, full of buzzwords and promises of market disruption. It painted a picture of innovation, of changing the world. And then I saw the financial projections, the initial investment required, the projected returns. It was all there, laid bare. And Sarah's name was listed as a significant early-stage investor. But it wasn't just the money that made my blood run cold. Mixed in with the business plans were personal notes, emails between Sarah and Leo. Casual, affectionate, laced with inside jokes. They talked about their future, about building something real, something lasting. There were dates, times, locations that didn't align with her supposed work commitments. They weren't just business partners. They were lovers, building a dream together, using my money to fund it. I scrolled through the emails, each one a fresh stab to my heart. They discussed their clandestine meetings, the thrill of their secret. One email, dated just last week, sent chills down my spine. Can't wait for our escape, my love. This is just the beginning. Soon we won't have to hide anymore. Soon it will all be ours. Escape, hide, ours. The words screamed betrayal. They weren't planning a future together as a couple. They were planning a future away from me, and they were taking our life savings with them. Then I saw an email from Sarah to Leo, sent just hours ago. It detailed her plan to gently divest from some of our other more stable investments to free up more capital for Project Phoenix. She was actively liquidating our future, our retirement, our security, without my knowledge or consent. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely navigate the files. I stumbled upon a PDF titled Investor Deck version 3.0. I opened it, and my world imploded. It was a slick, professional presentation full of charts and graphs. And in the section detailing the founding team, there was a picture of Leo looking confident and ambitious. Beside him, smiling serenely, was Sarah. Not as a colleague, not as an investor, as a co-founder. Co-founder. The word hit me like a physical blow. She hadn't just invested in Leo's company. She was Leo's company. She was building it with him. Her late nights, her hushed phone calls, her evasiveness, it all clicked into place, a horrifyingly clear picture of her secret life. She was living a double life,
a charade of marriage and domesticity while simultaneously building a new future with another man. I felt a raw, primal scream build in my chest, a sound of pure agony and rage. I wanted to shatter everything, to tear down the walls, to expose her. But I was still paralyzed, trapped in the icy grip of shock. The love I had felt for her, the years of shared history, the trust I had so blindly placed in her, it all felt like a cruel, elaborate joke. I continued scrolling, a morbid fascination driving me. Then, buried deep within a subfolder labeled Legal and Financials, I found something that made my breath catch in my throat. It was a copy of our joint investment account statement, dated just yesterday, and next to it, a scanned document. A scanned copy of my driver's license, and underneath that, a notarized document that looked like a power of attorney. A power of attorney that authorized Sarah to make any and all financial decisions regarding our joint accounts. This wasn't just a secret affair. This was premeditated, calculated. She had set herself up to access and control our entire financial future, to fund her new life with Leo, leaving me with nothing. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow, knocking the air out of my lungs. She hadn't just been using our savings, she'd been systematically stripping me of any power or control over my own life. The anger that had been simmering beneath the surface erupted, a volcanic force that threatened to consume me. But it was mixed with a profound, soul-crushing grief. The woman I loved, the mother of our imaginary future children, the partner I thought I had, was a stranger, a deceiver, a thief. She had planned this meticulously for months, perhaps even years. I looked at her laptop, the glowing screen a beacon of her betrayal. The files, the emails, the picture of her and Leo, they were irrefutable proof. My entire life, the one I'd carefully constructed, the one I'd believed in, was a lie. She was not just my wife, she was my accomplice in her own infidelity, and I had been too blind, too trusting to see it. I heard a soft rustle from the bedroom. She was awake. The thought of her emerging, of having to face her, to pretend everything was normal, sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. I quickly closed the laptop, my hands still shaking. The guilt of snooping gnawed at me, but it was dwarfed by the enormity of her deception. I stood up, my legs feeling like lead. The silence in the house was now deafening, filled with the echoes of her lies and the shattered fragments of my trust. I walked towards the front door, the instinct to flee overwhelming me. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to escape this house, this life that was now tainted by her betrayal.
As I reached for the doorknob, I heard her voice, soft and sleepy from the bedroom doorway. "Dave, where are you going?" I froze, my hand on the cold metal. Turning around felt like turning myself in for a crime I hadn't committed, yet had been a victim of. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. I could feel her eyes on me, searching, questioning. The dimly lit hallway seemed to stretch into an infinite abyss, separating me from her, from the life we had built, from the man I used to be. The weight of what I had discovered, the sheer magnitude of her duplicity, threatened to crush me. I knew, with a terrifying certainty, that nothing would ever be the same again. The carefully constructed world I inhabited had been reduced to rubble, and I was standing alone in the debris, the ashes of my trust swirling around me like a toxic storm. What was I going to do? How could I possibly confront her with this knowledge? And more importantly, how could I ever survive what was about to come? My voice, when I finally spoke, was a ragged whisper, barely audible above the frantic pounding of my own heart. Just needed some air. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. The hallway, bathed in the weak spill of light from the living room, felt like a stage, and I was trapped in the spotlight, unable to move, unable to breathe. The faint floral scent of her perfume, so cloyingly sweet, now felt like a suffocating shroud. She was silent for a moment, and I imagined her standing there in her robe, the sleep still in her eyes, but with that flicker of something sharp, something guarded, already starting to surface. She was good at that. She was always good at masking the cracks. "At this hour, Dave?" Her voice was softer now, laced with a feigned concern that made my stomach churn. "Is something wrong?" The question hung in the air,
heavy with unspoken accusation, with a twisted sort of irony. Something was wrong. Everything was wrong. My entire foundation had crumbled, and she was asking if something was wrong. I felt a surge of pure, unadulterated rage, hot and blinding, but it was immediately leavened by a crushing wave of despair. No, I lied, my voice cracking. Nothing. Just couldn't sleep. I forced myself to take a step towards the door, my hand still on the knob, a silent plea for escape. I'll just take a walk. I heard her shift her weight, the soft fabric of her robe rustling. She was coming closer. I could feel her presence behind me, a tangible weight pressing down on my chest. My palms were slick with sweat. "Dave, wait." Her voice was firm now, the sweepy innocence gone, replaced by that sharp, business-like tone she reserved for moments like this, I suppose, the moments when her carefully constructed world was threatened. I stopped, my back still to her. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to run, to get out, to put as much distance between us as possible before the dam finally broke.
But I was a moth to a flame, drawn by the morbid fascination of the destruction. "What is it, Sarah?" My voice was flat, devoid of emotion. I was a husk, an automaton. The man who had loved her, the man who had trusted her implicitly, was gone, reduced to ash. She was standing just a few feet behind me now. I could feel the heat radiating off her, or perhaps that was just the fire raging inside me. "You're acting strange. Did something happen at work?" I let out a choked, humorless laugh. "Work. Right. That's what we're calling it now, isn't it?" The silence that followed was a chasm. It stretched, taut and vibrating, each second an eternity. I imagined her trying to process my words, to decipher the veiled accusation. She wouldn't understand. Or maybe she would. Maybe, in that split second, a flicker of panic would cross her face, a momentary lapse in her masterful control. "What are you talking about, Dave?" Her voice was carefully measured, a cool, detached tone that was far more terrifying than any outburst. I turned around then, slowly. The hallway light, a harsh, unforgiving glow, illuminated her face. She stood there, her arms crossed, her expression a mask of innocent confusion. But her eyes were darting, scanning my face, searching for clues, for the extent of what I knew. They were the eyes of a cornered animal, sharp and wary. "I'm talking about Project Phoenix, Sarah." The mask cracked, just a sliver, a tightening around her jaw, a subtle widening of her pupils. It was enough. It was everything. "I don't know what you're talking about." She tried to sound dismissive, but there was a tremor in her voice, a subtle waver that betrayed her. "Don't you?" I took a step towards her, my hands clenching and unclenching at my sides. The anger was a raw, physical thing now, clawing its way up my throat. "Because I saw the files, Sarah. I saw the emails. I saw the Leo's Vision document. I saw you, co-founder." The word was a venomous hiss. It hung in the air between us, a tangible accusation. Her carefully constructed composure began to crumble, the facade peeling away layer by layer, revealing the architect of deception beneath. Her face drained of color. Her eyes, which had been darting, now fixed on mine, wide with a dawning horror. She took a step back, bumping into the wall. "Dave, I can explain." "Can you?" My voice was dangerously low, a predator's growl. "Can you explain why our savings account is being systematically emptied? Can you explain the power of attorney? The scanned driver's license? Was that all part of the vision too, Sarah? Building a future for yourself with him by robbing me blind?" The dam had broken. The carefully controlled rage, the numb shock, the soul-crushing grief, it all converged, erupting in a torrent of accusations, of raw, agonizing truth. "You looked me in the eye tonight," I continued, my voice rising, cracking with emotion. "You asked me if everything was okay.
You ate dinner with me, pretending everything was normal, while you were siphoning off our life, our future, to fund your little fantasy with Leo." Tears welled up in her eyes, but they looked less like sorrow and more like a strategic defense. "It wasn't like that, Dave. It was complicated. Complicated? I laughed again, a harsh, broken sound. Complicated? Is that what you call it when you steal from your husband? When you lie to him every single day? When you plan an escape with another man while you're still sharing my bed? She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She just stood there, vulnerable and exposed, the carefully curated image of the devoted wife, shattered into a million pieces. The power of attorney. That was the key. That was the cold, hard proof of her premeditation. She hadn't just been having an affair. She had been executing a meticulously planned heist of my life. "I saw your picture, Sarah," I said, the words catching in my throat. "The investor deck, you and Leo, smiling, like a real couple, building a real future. Our future." The tears were flowing freely now, blurring her vision. But I couldn't afford to be swayed by them. I had seen too much. I had felt too much. The pain was too deep. The betrayal too profound. "How could you?" The question was a whisper, a plea for an answer I knew I would never get. "How could you do this to us? To me?" She finally found her voice, a raw, ragged sob escaping her lips. I didn't want to hurt you, Dave. I wanted something more." "Something more?" My voice was a raw scream now. And I wasn't enough? Our life wasn't enough? The house, the trips, the future we were building, that wasn't enough for you? She shook her head, her hair falling around her face. "It's not about you, Dave. It's about me. I felt trapped. I needed to feel alive again." The words hit me like a physical blow. Trapped. Alive. Was that what she thought? That I had suffocated her, that I had dimmed her light. The injustice of it all, the sheer self-centeredness of her confession, sent a fresh wave of fury through me. "So you decided to steal my life to feel alive?" I took another step toward her, my eyes burning with unshed tears. "You decided to ruin me, to take everything we've worked for, everything we've built, just so you could have your little adventure, your escape." She flinched, her gaze dropping to the floor. "It wasn't just an adventure, Dave. It was real. What Leo and I have, it's real. Real." The word echoed in the sterile hallway, a stark counterpoint to the shattered reality I was living. Real. My life, our marriage, our shared dreams, they were all just an illusion to her, a temporary inconvenience until her real life could begin. And me, I choked out the words. What was I, Sarah? A placeholder, a stepping stone, someone to pay the bills while you went off to find your true love and your something more.
She finally looked up, her face streaked with tears, her eyes pleading. "Dave, please, we can fix this. We can fix this?" I cut her off, my voice laced with a bitter sarcasm. "How do you fix this, Sarah? How do you unsteal our money? How do you unlie to me? How do you unshatter a person's entire world and expect them to just glue it back together?" I could feel the anger draining out of me, replaced by a profound, crushing emptiness. The fight was gone. What was the point? She had made her choice. She had built her new life, brick by brick, lie by lie, funded by my trust and our shared future. I looked at her, at the woman I had loved, the woman I had planned a future with, and I saw only a stranger, a beautiful, terrifying stranger who had systematically dismantled my life without a second thought. The emotional intensity of the last few hours, the sheer weight of the revelation had left me hollowed out. "I can't do this anymore, Sarah," I whispered, the words barely audible. "I can't be married to a thief. I can't be married to someone who plans my financial ruin while sleeping next to me." Her breath hitched. She took another step forward, her hands reaching out, then dropping. "Dave, don't say that. It's the truth," I said, my voice steady now, eerily calm.
The rage had subsided, leaving behind a chilling clarity. You made your choice. You built your escape plan. Now you get to live it. I turned back to the door, my hand finding the doorknob again. This time there was no hesitation. I pulled it open. The cool night air hit my face, a welcome balm. The street lights cast long, lonely shadows on the empty suburban street. "Where are you going?" Her voice, desperate now, followed me. "Away," I said, not looking back, just away. I stepped out onto the porch, the screen door closing softly behind me. The sound was final, definitive. I stood on the walkway, the familiar houses of our neighborhood now looking alien, hostile. The dog, sensing the shift in atmosphere, whimpered from inside. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I started walking, my footsteps echoing on the pavement, the sound swallowed by the vast, indifferent silence of the night. Each step took me further away from the house, from the life I had known, from the man I had been. The weight of her betrayal was immense, a crushing burden, but for the first time in hours, I felt a sliver of something akin to relief. The charade was over. The truth was out. And though I was shattered, though my world had imploded, I was finally free from the suffocating embrace of her lies. The path ahead was dark, uncertain, and terrifyingly lonely, but it was mine. And for now, that was all that mattered. I just kept walking, the cool night air filling my lungs, a first, shaky exhale.